We're quitting our jobs. You'll take care of us while we figure things out, my wife's sisters texted. My wife agreed, do that or leave. I answered, that's not on me, and signed a contract for a job abroad starting Monday. 10 minutes later, my wife wrote, look, I'm not saying I'm a culinary genius or anything, but I can usually manage toast without committing arson. Usually. But it was 8:12 on a Thursday morning, and I was standing in our kitchen watching two innocent slices of whole wheat bread transform into charcoal briquettes while the smoke detector screamed bloody murder like it was auditioning for a horror movie. My coffee was getting cold on the counter. I had a conference call in exactly 48 minutes, and I'd already hit snooze 3 times, which meant my day was basically starting in the 7th circle of hell. Par for the course, really. What I didn't know, what I couldn't have possibly predicted while frantically waving a dish towel at the smoke detector like some kind of domesticated lunatic, was that my entire life was about to implode faster than those sorry pieces of toast. The ping came from across the kitchen. Claire's phone, sitting face up on the counter next to her untouched green smoothie that probably cost more than our water bill, lit up like a Christmas tree. 3 messages. Rapid fire. The kind of message volley that usually means someone's either dying, getting married, or about to ask for money. In my wife's family, it was almost always option 3, with a side of emotional manipulation and a garnish of guilt. I should have known better than to look. I really should have. But curiosity and stupidity are basically twins, and I glanced over while jamming the toaster's eject button for the 4th time. The family group chat, ominously named Sisters Forever, with about 17 heart emojis, was absolutely popping off. Maya's name appeared first, then Brooks, and I watched in real time as my peaceful Thursday morning got drop-kicked into the sun. We're quitting our jobs. The first message read, complete with a little peace sign emoji that felt aggressively ironic. It's time to follow our truth and find our authentic selves. Oh, fantastic. Nothing screams financial responsibility like spontaneous unemployment wrapped in self-help buzzwords. But wait, there was more, because of course there was more. There's always more with these people. You'll take care of us while we figure things out, right? This one came with a prayer hands emoji, like they were asking God himself instead of their sister and her increasingly skeptical husband. We're family, and family takes care of each other. I literally choked on my coffee. Like, full-on spluttered and coughed, coffee dribbling down my chin while I tried to process the absolutely staggering audacity I just witnessed through a phone screen. The entitlement was so thick, so palpable, you could have scooped it up with a spoon and served it at a potluck. Actually, scratch that. You could have packaged it, sold it on Amazon, and made millions. Audacity, now available in family size. Claire walked into the kitchen at that exact moment, fresh from her morning yoga session, looking serene and centered and completely unbothered by the fact that our life was actively catching fire. She picked up her phone, read the messages with the same expression someone might use while reading a recipe for banana bread, and then, I swear I'm not making this up, she smiled. She actually smiled, like her sisters hadn't just announced they were about to become our permanent financial dependents. Her thumbs moved across the screen with horrifying speed and confidence. Of course, girls, she typed, each word landing on my soul like a ton of bricks. Family helps family. We'll figure it out together. I stood there, spatula in hand, smoke detector still chirping in the background, watching my wife commit financial homicide via text message. She hit send, looked up at me with those calm, peaceful eyes that I'd once found attractive but now just found terrifying, and said with the kind of serenity that belongs to cult leaders and people who've given up on reality, we'll just support them for a while. It'll be fine. The word came out sharper than I intended, but honestly, I think I showed remarkable restraint. As in the same, we who literally had a 15-minute argument last week about whether we could afford the premium Netflix subscription. The same we who've been eating ramen 3 nights a week because the car insurance came due. That we? She frowned, and I could see the disappointment settling into her features like she was personally offended that I had the nerve to bring up trivial little things like math and reality. Don't be so dramatic, Luke. You're good with money. You always figure it out. Right. Sure. Because I'm also pretty good with oxygen, doesn't mean I want to share my entire supply with her perpetually unemployed sisters indefinitely. I'm good with a lot of things, actually. Parallel parking, remembering passwords, not setting the kitchen on fire. But performing financial miracles wasn't exactly in my skill set, despite what my wife seemed to think. The thing is, Maya and Brooke weren't exactly strangers to the concept of finding themselves. Maya had found herself approximately 7 times in the last 3 years, each discovery requiring a different expensive certification program and resulting in exactly $0 of income. Brooke had been building her brand since 2019, which apparently meant posting filtered selfies and expecting the universe to deposit paychecks into her account through sheer manifestation. Between the two of them, they had the financial planning skills of drunk toddlers at a casino. And now they wanted me, to subsidize their latest journey of self-discovery. No plan, no savings, no timeline, just vibes and expectations and the crushing weight of family obligation. I looked at my wife, standing there in her $80 yoga pants that we definitely couldn't afford, waiting for me to nod and smile and accept that we were about to become a halfway house for grown women who thought budgeting was a type of meditation. Something in me just snapped. Maybe it was the burnt toast. Maybe it was the years of watching her family treat me like a walking ATM with a pulse. Maybe I was just tired of being good with money, while everyone else was good at spending mine. I pulled out my phone, opened our family group chat, and typed the most liberating 4 words I'd written in my entire marriage. That's not on me. Then I turned to my laptop, still open on the kitchen table from last night, and found the email I'd been staring at for 3 weeks. The overseas job offer. 6 months in Dublin. Better pay, housing included, and approximately 3,000 miles between me and this circus. My cursor had been hovering over that contract like an indecisive hummingbird for days, but suddenly my hand was steady, my mind was clear, and I clicked sign and accept with the kind of decisive confidence usually reserved for action heroes and people who finally had enough. The confirmation email arrived 10 seconds later. Flight arrangements would follow within 24 hours. My phone buzzed. Claire's text lit up the screen, and I could practically feel the ice crystals forming on the words. If you walk away from this family, don't bother coming home. I looked around our cramped kitchen, the burnt toast, the expensive smoothie, the yoga mat in the corner, the pile of unpaid bills on the counter that somehow always became my problem. Then I looked at my wife, standing there with her phone clenched in her hand like a weapon, and I realized something profound. I was already gone. I grabbed my gym bag from the hallway closet and started packing. Turns out, when you're properly motivated, you can pack faster than Amazon Prime delivers. Freedom, apparently, came with free 2-day shipping. Here's the thing about red flags. When you're wearing rose-colored glasses, they just look like regular flags. Inspirational quote, right? I should get that tattooed on my forehead as a reminder of my spectacularly poor judgment when I said, I do 6 years ago. Because to really understand why I snapped harder than a glow stick at a rave, you need the full context of the absolute 3-ring circus I married into. And trust me, this wasn't some cute little traveling carnival with cotton candy and balloon animals. This was Cirque du Soleil meets a hostage negotiation meets a pyramid scheme, except nobody was talented, everyone wanted money, and the only person being held hostage was me. Let me introduce you to the cast of characters who made my life feel like a never-ending episode of a reality show that nobody asked for and everyone should have canceled after the pilot. First up, Beverly, my mother-in-law, who could guilt-trip a Buddhist monk into feeling bad about achieving enlightenment. This woman spoke exclusively in passive-aggressive therapy speak mixed with Southern charm that felt more like a threat than hospitality. Every single sentence out of her mouth was carefully engineered to make you feel like you'd personally disappointed Jesus, your ancestors, and her book club all at once. Oh, Luke, honey, I'm not saying you're selfish. I'm just saying some people prioritize material things over family bonds. Bless your heart. Yeah, Beverly, and some people prioritize emotional manipulation over honest communication, but I digress. She had this ability, and I'm convinced it was a superpower, to make every conversation circle back to how someone in the family needed financial help. We could be discussing the weather, and somehow by the end of the conversation, I'd be hearing about how Maya's chakra candle business needed a small investment of just $5,000 to really take off. The woman could have worked for the CIA. Actually, the CIA should study her techniques. Forget waterboarding. Just put Beverly in a room with a terrorist and she'll have them emptying their bank accounts within 20 minutes. Then there was Harold, Beverly's husband and my father-in-law, who existed primarily as a nodding mechanism. I'm not entirely convinced Harold had independent thoughts. He was like one of those bobblehead dolls you see on car dashboards, except less animated. Beverly would say something completely insane like, "We should all move into a commune and share expenses," and Harold would nod sagely like she'd just quoted Einstein. I once tried to have a one-on-one conversation with him about football, and he somehow steered it back to whether I'd considered helping Brooke with her credit card debt. The man was a trained SEAL, except instead of clapping for fish, he nodded for financial exploitation. But the real stars of this dysfunctional show were Claire's sisters, Maya and Brooke. These two made reality TV stars look hardworking and grounded. Maya was 32 years old and had held approximately 14 jobs in the last 5 years, which sounds impressive until you realize she'd quit all of them within 3 months. She called herself a spiritual entrepreneur, which is apparently code for unemployed, but make it mystical. Her current business venture involved selling scented candles shaped like chakras, which she made in Beverly's garage and sold on an Etsy shop that had generated roughly $47 in revenue over 8 months. $47. I've found more money in couch cushions. But according to Maya, she was building an empire and just needed time to align with her purpose. Her purpose, apparently, involved watching Netflix for 6 hours a day and posting inspirational quotes on Instagram that she definitely stole from other people. I remember one particular conversation where Maya explained her business philosophy to me like I was a child learning basic math. "Luke, you just don't understand the wellness space. People are craving authentic, handmade products that speak to their souls." I nodded and said, "Maya, your candles smell like a head shop and a funeral home had a baby. Maybe that's the problem." She'd stared at me like I'd just insulted her firstborn, then went crying to Claire about how I didn't support women in business. Women in business I support. Women making candles shaped like butts and calling it spirituality? That's where I draw the line. Then there was Brooke, the baby of the family at 28, who introduced herself to people as a content creator and influencer. She had 400 Instagram followers, and I'm pretty sure 300 of them were bots and her own alternate accounts. This girl had a ring light that cost more than our monthly grocery budget, and she used it to film herself doing makeup tutorials that got 17 views. 17. My aunt's Facebook posts about her cat got more engagement, and her cat was dead. Brooke's entire personality revolved around building her brand, which apparently meant taking selfies at brunch spots she couldn't afford and then asking me to Venmo her for the avocado toast because it's a business expense. Once, I made the mistake of asking what her business model was, and she gave me this dead serious look and said, "Monetizing my aesthetic." Her aesthetic, by the way, was unemployed millennial with rich parents. Except her parents weren't rich, they just had me. I used to laugh about it, honestly. In the beginning, I thought it was quirky. "That's just Claire's family," I'd tell my buddies over beers. "They're a little intense, but they mean well. Harmless, really. Harmless." That's what I said. Like calling a shark harmless because it hasn't bitten you yet, just circled you for an hour while you tread water. But here's what I didn't realize until I was in too deep. These people could emotionally blackmail a cactus into donating water during a drought. They perfected the art of making you feel guilty for having boundaries, selfish for wanting to keep your own money, and cruel for expecting grown adults to support themselves. It was masterclass level manipulation, and I'd enrolled without reading the syllabus. Every family dinner turned into a financial ambush. We'd sit down for what I thought would be a normal meal. Pot roast, small talk, maybe some light complaining about politics or the neighbors, and then Beverly would strike. "Luke, sweetheart, could you just help Brooke with her rent this month?" Just until her influencer deal comes through. "What deal?" I'd ask, already knowing the answer would make my head hurt. "Well, she's manifesting one. She's been doing vision boards." Vision boards. That's what we'd come to. I was supposed to subsidize someone's rent because they'd glued pictures of Range Rovers and beach houses on a poster board and called it a business plan. Even Claire got in on the action. "You make good money, honey," she'd say, patting my hand like I was being unreasonable. "It's just until they get stabilized." Stabilized. They'd been stabilizing for 5 years. NASA should study these people. They've achieved a level of perpetual instability that defies the laws of physics. If scientists could figure out how they managed to remain financially suspended in midair with zero visible means of support, we could probably solve the energy crisis. But I played along. I smiled. I nodded. I transferred money and pretended it was fine because that's what you do for family, right? Wrong. Dead wrong. Sunday dinners at Beverly and Harold's house were supposed to be this sacred family tradition, this wholesome Norman Rockwell painting come to life, where everyone gathered around the table to share food and laughter and create precious memories. That's the story Beverly told everyone at her book club, anyway. The reality was more like a hostage situation with better silverware and a side salad. But I kept showing up every week like some kind of masochist with a death wish, probably because Claire had made it abundantly clear that skipping family dinner was grounds for divorce, or at minimum, sleeping on the couch for a month. This particular Sunday, I'd actually made an effort. I'd stopped at the fancy grocery store, the one where a bottle of wine costs more than a car payment, and picked up a nice Cabernet, because I figured if I was going to suffer through another evening of thinly veiled requests for money, I might as well be slightly buzzed while it happened. I even wore the button-down shirt Claire liked, the blue one that she said made my eyes pop, whatever that meant. I was trying. God help me. I was actually trying to be a good sport about the whole thing. We arrived at 5:30 on the dot, because showing up late to Beverly's house was treated like a war crime. The smell of lasagna hit me the moment Harold opened the door, and I'll admit, my stomach growled appreciatively. Say what you want about my mother-in-law's psychological warfare tactics, but the woman could cook. Her lasagna was the kind that made you temporarily forget you were related to terrible people. Maya and Brooke were already there, sprawled across the living room couch like they owned the place, which I guess they kind of did since they'd been living there on and off for the past 2 years. Maya was wearing some kind of flowing caftan situation that looked like she'd mugged a fortune teller, and Brooke was filming herself for what I assumed was another groundbreaking piece of content that would get 12 views and 3 likes from bots. Luke, Beverly swept in from the kitchen, wiping her hands on an apron that said, "World's Best Mom," in glittery letters. She pulled me into a hug that lasted about 3 seconds too long and smelled like expensive perfume and emotional manipulation. "So glad you could make it, sweetheart. We have exciting news tonight." Exciting news. In my experience, exciting news from this family usually meant someone had gotten themselves into a situation that would somehow require my wallet to fix. The last time we'd had exciting news, it was Maya announcing she'd signed up for a $3,000 life coaching certification program, and would I mind spotting her the tuition just until her candle business took off. Spoiler alert, the candles never took off, but my credit card balance sure did. We sat down to dinner at the absurdly large dining table that could have seated 12, but usually only sat 6 because, well, most of Claire's extended family had wisely distanced themselves from this particular branch of the family tree. Beverly brought out the lasagna with the kind of flourish usually reserved for presenting the crown jewels, and for about 5 blissful minutes, everyone was too busy eating to start any drama. Then Maya put down her fork, dabbed at her mouth with her napkin in this weirdly theatrical way, and cleared her throat like she was about to give a TED Talk. "So, I have an announcement," she said, and I swear the temperature in the room dropped about 10 degrees. "I've decided to resign from my position at the marketing firm." Position. She'd been there for 6 weeks and worked as a receptionist, but sure, let's call it a position. That makes it sound way more impressive than answering phones and occasionally watering the office plants. "I need to pursue alignment," she continued, and I watched in horrified fascination as everyone at the table, everyone except me, nodded like this made perfect sense. "Corporate life is killing my creativity, and I've realized that I need to focus on building my wellness empire full-time." Wellness empire. The girl had sold $47 worth of candles shaped like butts, and she was calling it an empire. Alexander the Great was rolling in his grave. Before I could fully process the nuclear bomb Maya had just dropped, Brooke chimed in like they'd rehearsed this intervention. "I'm leaving my job too," she announced, setting down her wine glass with an authoritative clink. "I've been interviewing for content creation positions, but honestly, I think I need to just focus on growing my personal brand. Traditional employment is, like, so limiting for creative people." Traditional employment. She'd been working part-time at a juice bar for minimum wage plus tips, and she was talking about it like she'd been shackled in a coal mine. The juice bar gig was literally 4 hours a day, 3 days a week, and I happened to know she'd called in sick at least twice a month since she started. Claire, my darling wife, the woman who'd promised to love and cherish me through richer and poorer, but apparently hadn't read the fine print about enabling her sister's delusions, actually clapped her hands together like they'd just announced they'd won the lottery. "That's so brave," she gushed, her eyes shining with what I can only describe as misplaced pride. "I'm so proud of you both for following your dreams." Dreams. Right. Because unemployment with no backup plan is basically the American dream now, according to the revised edition that nobody sent me. Beverly reached across the table and squeezed both her daughter's hands in this moment of maternal solidarity that made me want to throw my lasagna against the wall. "You girls are so courageous," she cooed. "It takes real strength to walk away from security to pursue your passions." Harold nodded. Of course Harold nodded. I don't think the man had disagreed with anything anyone said since 1987. I sat there, fork frozen halfway to my mouth, doing rapid-fire mental calculations that would have made a NASA engineer proud. Rent, utilities, car insurance, gas, groceries, student loans, credit card payments. And now, apparently, two fully grown adults with zero income, zero savings, and zero realistic plans for the future. The math wasn't mathing. Actually, the math was screaming and running away and filing a restraining order. When I didn't immediately burst into applause or offer congratulations, Beverly turned her attention to me with the kind of smile a shark gives a seal. "You'll take care of them, Luke. Your family now." She said it like it was already decided, like my opinion on funding this disaster was about as relevant as a screen door on a submarine. That's when it really hit me. Being family to these people didn't mean love or support or mutual respect. It meant being the ATM that never said no, the wallet that never closed, the bank that never checked your credit score or asked uncomfortable questions like, "What's your plan?" Or "Have you considered, I don't know, keeping your job?" I looked around the table at these people who I'd been breaking my back to support for years. Maya, with her chakra candles and her delusions of entrepreneurship. Brooke, with her ring light and her 17 followers. Beverly, orchestrating this whole production like a conductor leading an orchestra of chaos. Harold, nodding along like a dashboard bobblehead. And Claire, my wife, looking at me with expectation in her eyes like I was about to volunteer as tribute. The lasagna suddenly tasted like cardboard and regret. I woke up the next morning with a headache that felt like a marching band was performing a halftime show inside my skull, which was probably karmic justice for drinking 3 glasses of wine at dinner while watching my life circle the drain. Claire was already up, doing her morning yoga routine in the living room, contorting herself into positions that looked physically impossible and deeply uncomfortable while listening to some pan flute meditation music that made me want to commit a felony. I stumbled into the kitchen, desperate for coffee and maybe a new identity, when I heard it. The sound that had become the soundtrack to my personal nightmare. Ping, ping, ping. The family group chat was blowing up like it was New Year's Eve, and everyone was sending their resolutions simultaneously. I didn't even need to look at Claire's phone to know it was bad news. You develop a sixth sense for incoming disasters when you've been married into this family for 6 years. It's like how animals can sense earthquakes before they happen, except instead of running for safety, I just stood there holding my empty coffee mug like an idiot, waiting for the inevitable. Claire's phone was face up on the kitchen counter, practically vibrating off the granite with the sheer volume of incoming messages. I could see them lighting up the screen from across the room, and against every survival instinct I possessed, I walked closer. It's like watching a car crash in slow motion. You know you should look away, you know nothing good will come from witnessing it, but some morbid part of your brain just has to see how bad it gets. Maya's name popped up first, naturally, because she was always leading the charge when it came to terrible decisions. "We're officially job-free," she'd written, complete with about 15 celebration emojis, champagne bottles, party poppers, dancing ladies, the works. "Freedom feels amazing. No more corporate chains holding us back from our true potential." Corporate chains. The girl had answered phones and made coffee runs. She wasn't exactly working in a coal mine. But sure, Maya, you're basically Harriet Tubman leading yourself out of slavery, except instead of actual oppression, you're escaping a steady paycheck and health insurance. Then came Brooke's contribution, Because of course these two were operating as a tag team. We'll move in with you guys till we get back on our feet. Should we bring our stuff this weekend or next? LOL, we have so much to pack. I read that message 3 times, certain I'd hallucinated it or suffered some kind of stroke that was affecting my reading comprehension. They were planning to move in. Not asking. Planning. As in, this was already decided, already set in motion, and I was apparently the last person to get the memo about how my house was becoming a halfway home for delusional adults. The mental math started immediately, and it was uglier than Beverly's Christmas sweater collection. Our apartment was 900 square feet. Claire and I already bumped into each other constantly, doing this awkward dance in the hallway where we both try to pass at the same time and end up just standing there like 2 NPCs in a broken video game. Add 2 more full-grown women with their belongings, their drama, their complete inability to function independently, and we'd be living like sardines in a can, except sardines probably had better boundaries. Claire breezed into the kitchen right then, glowing with post-yoga endorphins and blissful ignorance, grabbed her phone, and read the messages with the biggest smile I'd seen since our wedding day. That should have been romantic or touching or something, but instead, it filled me with the kind of dread usually reserved for horror movie protagonists who hear strange noises in the basement and decide to investigate anyway. "This is great," she said, turning to me with genuine excitement lighting up her face. "The girls need us right now, and we have the space. We'll make it work, right?" I stared at her. Just stared. For a full 10 seconds, I didn't say anything because my brain was trying to process whether my wife had suffered a recent head injury that I'd somehow missed. "We'll make it work." That phrase had become her catch-all solution to every impossible situation. Like if she just said it with enough confidence, the laws of physics and basic mathematics would bend to her will. "Claire," I finally said, my voice coming out way calmer than I felt, which was impressive considering my internal monologue was just screaming continuously. "We live in a 2-bedroom apartment. 1 bedroom is our actual bedroom. The other one is your office / my gaming room / storage unit for all the stuff we can't fit anywhere else. Where exactly are 2 additional humans supposed to sleep? Are we stacking them? Should I build bunk beds? Maybe we can get one of those Murphy beds that fold into the wall. Except we don't have any free walls because they're all covered with your sister's rejected vision boards." She crossed her arms, and I watched her expression shift from excited to annoyed in about half a second. "Don't be dramatic, Luke. Families help each other. Maya and Brooke would do the same for us." Would they though? Would they really? Because in my experience, the only thing Maya and Brooke had ever done for us was create elaborate excuses for why they needed money and then get offended when I had the audacity to ask when they'd pay it back. But I didn't say that because I'd learned that pointing out obvious truths to Claire when it came to her family was about as productive as arguing with a brick wall, except the brick wall would probably be more reasonable. "Claire, if we add 1 more person to this apartment, I'll have to sleep standing up," I said, and I wasn't even exaggerating. "Actually, forget that, I'll have to sleep in the car. Or maybe I can just rotate between standing in corners like that kid from the Blair Witch Project. We can't do this. We literally, physically, financially cannot do this." Her jaw tightened, and I saw that look come into her eyes, the one that meant I'd crossed some invisible line that apparently only she could see. "Then do that," she said, her voice dropping into that cold, measured tone that she used when she was done negotiating. "Do that or leave. Those are your options, Luke. Support my family or get out." And there it was. The ultimatum I'd been waiting for, honestly, probably for years. The moment where she finally just came out and said what had been implied in every conversation, every guilt trip, every manipulative family dinner. I was either the ATM that funded this circus, or I was nothing. I stood there in our kitchen, in the apartment where I paid 75% of the rent, looking at my wife who'd just given me an eviction notice for having the audacity to suggest that housing 2 unemployed adults wasn't financially viable. Something in my chest just released. Like a pressure valve had been opened, and all the resentment and frustration and exhausted compliance just came pouring out. "Okay," I said simply. Claire blinked, clearly not expecting that response. "Okay, what?" "Okay, I'll leave." I walked to our bedroom, grabbed my laptop from the nightstand where it had been mocking me with that unopened job offer for 3 weeks, and sat down on the edge of the bed. My hands were surprisingly steady as I opened my email, found the message from the Dublin office, and clicked on the contract attachment. The hotel I checked into was one of those budget chains that smells like industrial cleaner and broken dreams, but it had a bed, Wi-Fi, and most importantly, it was approximately 15 miles away from the circus I'd just escaped. I dropped my duffel bag on the scratchy comforter, ordered a pizza that would probably taste like cardboard, and finally exhaled for what felt like the first time in 6 years. The room was quiet. Gloriously, beautifully quiet. No pan flute meditation music. No ring lights. No conversations about manifesting abundance or aligning with the universe. Just blessed silence and the distant hum of the ice machine down the hall. That peace lasted approximately 45 minutes before my phone started lighting up like a Christmas tree on steroids. The family group chat, which I'd forgotten to mute in my hasty escape, was absolutely losing its mind. Messages were flooding in faster than I could read them, and each notification felt like a tiny digital punch to the face. I grabbed my phone and watched the carnage unfold in real time, and honestly, it was like watching a reality show except I was the villain and everyone else was competing for the gold medal and guilt tripping. Claire had apparently sent out an emergency broadcast to the entire family network, painting me as some kind of heartless monster who'd abandoned ship during a crisis. Never mind that the crisis was entirely self-inflicted and completely avoidable. Never mind that 2 grown women had voluntarily made themselves unemployed without consulting anyone with functional brain cells. Never mind that I'd been bankrolling this family's poor decisions for longer than some people stay married. Nope, I was the bad guy because I'd had the audacity to say no. The messages came in waves, each one more dramatic than the last. Claire, you're being selfish. This is about more than just money. This is about family values and commitment, and being there when people need you most. I almost responded with, yeah, and where were those values when everyone was using me like a human credit card? But I restrained myself. Barely. Maya, you're abandoning family in their darkest hour. The universe sees everything, Luke. Karma will remember this. The universe. Right. Because the universe definitely keeps detailed financial records and cares about Maya's employment status. I wondered if the universe also remembered the $3,000 I'd given her for the candle business that went nowhere, or if karma only worked one way in her mystical worldview. Then came Brooke's contribution, which honestly might have been the most hilarious one. Unfollowing you from my wellness page. Can't have toxic energy in my circle. I stared at that message for a solid 30 seconds. That one actually hurt, but not for the reasons she probably thought. It hurt because I was literally her only follower who consistently liked her posts. I'd been pity-liking her breakfast selfies and her inspirational quote reposts for 2 years, and this was the thanks I got. Unfollowed. Blocked from her prestigious wellness page that had the same engagement rate as a corporate training video nobody wanted to watch. But wait, there was more. Because of course there was more. This family didn't do anything halfway. They went full nuclear option every single time. Beverly had sent a message to the extended family group chat. Yes, there were multiple group chats, because apparently one wasn't enough for the drama distribution network. Please keep Luke in your prayers. He's going through a difficult time and making choices that he'll regret. We're organizing a family intervention to help him see clearly. An intervention. They were organizing an intervention. For me. Because I'd gotten a better job and refused to house 2 unemployed adults. This was the level of delusion we were operating at. I half expected them to hire a professional interventionist, complete with a camera crew and a tearful confrontation where everyone talked about how my fiscal responsibility had hurt them. My cousin Derek, who I barely talked to and who'd borrowed $500 from me 3 years ago that I never saw again, chimed in with, "Dude, family is forever. Jobs come and go. Don't burn bridges over money." The irony of getting financial advice from Derek, who once tried to start a cryptocurrency based on his dog's birthday, was not lost on me. I typed out a response about how bridges work better when they're not supporting 17 people who refused to contribute to the toll, but deleted it. Not worth the energy. Then came the message that made me actually laugh out loud, startling the people in the room next door. Family meeting. 7 p.m. tonight. Your apartment. Everyone will be there. We need to discuss this situation as adults. I checked my watch. It was 6:47 p.m. They'd given me 13 minutes notice for a mandatory family meeting at a place I no longer lived. The organizational skills were really something special. I replied with the only response that felt appropriate. Busy packing for Dublin. Good luck with the meeting, though. The response was immediate and came from at least 5 different people simultaneously, which suggested they were all sitting together planning this ambush, like it was the D-Day invasion. Claire sent, "This isn't optional, Luke. Be there or prove you don't care about this family." Maya added, "Your absence will speak volumes about your character." Brooke contributed, "I'm bringing my ring light to document this for my healing journey." Of course she was, because nothing says private family discussion like filming it for her 17 followers. I could already see the caption, "When toxic masculinity refuses accountability, a thread." I turned off my phone and ate my cardboard pizza in peace, watching some mindless cooking show where people competed to make elaborate desserts under time pressure. It was weirdly soothing. At least when these people melted down under stress, they just ruined a souffle instead of trying to ruin someone's financial future. At exactly 7:02 p.m., someone started pounding on my hotel room door like they were trying to break it down. For a second, I wondered if Claire had somehow tracked me here, but that seemed logistically impossible given I'd paid cash and used a fake name. Okay, I didn't use a fake name, but I should have. I crept to the door and looked through the peephole, and there they were, Beverly and Harold, standing in the hallway of my budget hotel like they'd come to perform an exorcism or serve me with papers, or possibly both. Beverly was wearing what I could only describe as her serious discussion outfit, a blazer with shoulder pads that looked like she was cosplaying as a 1980s corporate executive, pearls that probably cost more than my car, and an expression that could curdle milk. Harold stood behind her, looking uncomfortable in a suit that was slightly too tight, probably because Beverly had insisted they dress professionally for this intervention. "Open the door, Luke," Harold said in what I assumed was his attempt at a stern, authoritative voice, but it came out sounding more like a disappointed substitute teacher who'd caught you passing notes. "We need to talk about this situation like adults." Adults. That word kept getting thrown around like it meant something, like acting like an adult meant rolling over and letting people walk all over you while you smiled and said thank you. I'd been acting like an adult for 6 years, paying bills, showing up to work, fulfilling my responsibilities, while everyone else acted like toddlers throwing tantrums when they didn't get their way. "But sure, Harold, let's talk about adult behavior." "I would, Harold." I called through the door, not bothering to open it because I valued my sanity and my pizza. "But I'm allergic to hypocrisy, and I'm pretty sure you're both absolutely covered in it right now." Beverly gasped. Actually gasped. Like I'd just cursed in church or kicked a puppy or committed some other unforgivable social sin. "Lucas James Morrison, you open this door right now and face us like a man." Lucas James Morrison. She'd full-named me. I was a grown man being full-named by my mother-in-law in a hotel hallway. The absurdity of the situation was so thick you could cut it with a knife. I almost opened the door just to see the look on her face when I pointed out that facing someone like a man didn't mean submitting to financial blackmail, but I decided my pizza was more important than that particular satisfaction. "Beverly, I'm going to level with you," I said, grabbing another slice and settling back against the headboard. "I respect that you came all the way out here. I respect that you tracked me down like some kind of emotional bounty hunter. Really impressive detective work. But I'm not opening this door, I'm not attending your intervention, and I'm definitely not changing my mind about Dublin. So unless you're here to deliver Publishers Clearinghouse-sized checks, I think we're done here. This is about more than money." Beverly's voice went up about 3 octaves, and I heard someone from another room yell, "Keep it down," which honestly just made the whole situation more entertaining. "This is about loyalty and family and the commitments you made when you married Claire." "Funny," I said, taking a bite of my pizza that was indeed as cardboard-like as predicted. "I don't remember the part of my wedding vows where I promised to fund unlimited unemployment benefits for my in-laws. Must have been in the fine print I missed while I was busy, actually showing up and committing to something." Harold knocked again, softer this time, trying the good cop routine. "Son, we know you're upset. We know this has been stressful. But running away to Ireland isn't going to solve anything. First of all, Harold, I'm not your son. That's just something you say when you're about to ask me for money or try to manipulate me into doing something I don't want to do. Second, It's not running away when you're literally accepting a better job with a massive pay increase. That's called career advancement. People do it all the time. It's actually considered a good thing in most parts of the world. But your wife, Beverly started, and I could hear the tremor in her voice that meant she was gearing up for the waterworks, the guilt trip nuclear option. My wife gave me an ultimatum. I interrupted, because I was done letting them control the narrative. She told me to either bankroll her sister's unemployment vacation or leave. Those were my options, Beverly. A or B. Fund the circus or get out. So I chose B, and now everyone's acting shocked that I actually did what I was told to do. The math isn't complicated. There was silence from the hallway, and I wondered if they'd finally given up and left. Then Beverly's voice came through, quieter now, which was somehow more unsettling than the yelling. Luke, honey, I know Maya and Brooke can be challenging, but they're family. They need support right now. Just a few months, that's all we're asking. Just until they get on their feet. A few months. They'd been getting on their feet for 5 years, and somehow their feet never quite made contact with the ground. It was like watching someone try to stand up on a slip and slide. Lots of effort, lots of drama, absolutely zero progress. Beverly, let me paint you a picture, I said, setting down my pizza because this required my full attention. Maya is 32. She's had 14 jobs in 5 years. Every single one of them ended the same way. She quit because it wasn't aligned with her purpose or whatever spiritual excuse was trending that week. She sold exactly $47 worth of candles in 8 months. That's not a business. That's a hobby with delusions of grandeur. Brooke is 28 with 400 followers, 300 of which are definitely bots, and she thinks that's a career. These aren't women going through a rough patch. These are women who've never had to face consequences because someone, usually me, has always been there to catch them. That's cruel, Harold said, and he actually sounded offended, which was rich coming from a man who'd asked me for a loan to cover Brooke's credit card debt at my own birthday party. No, Harold, cruel would be enabling this behavior until they're 50 years old and still living in someone's spare room, still talking about their big break, still expecting other people to fund their lifestyles. What I'm doing is called boundaries. You should try it sometime. More silence. Then I heard Beverly whisper something to Harold that I couldn't quite make out. Probably strategizing their next move like this was a hostage negotiation instead of a simple conversation about adults taking responsibility for their own choices. We're not leaving until you talk to us face to face, Beverly finally said, and I could hear her settling in against the hallway wall. We'll stay here all night if we have to. I looked at my watch. It was 7:15 p.m. I had 13 more days until my flight. A perfectly comfortable bed, a mini fridge full of overpriced snacks, and absolutely no obligation to open that door. This was actually kind of relaxing, if you thought about it. They were the ones standing in a hotel hallway looking like door-to-door salesmen for emotional manipulation. I was the one horizontal with pizza. You do that, Beverly, I called out cheerfully. There's a vending machine down by the elevator if you get hungry. Takes 1s and 5s. Ice machine is on the 2nd floor. Might want to pace yourselves though. It's going to be a long night, and I'm not coming out until checkout time tomorrow at 11. I heard Beverly make a sound that was somewhere between a gasp and a shriek, and Harold muttered something about the younger generation and no respect, which was absolutely hilarious coming from people who'd shown up uninvited to guilt trip me into funding their daughter's unemployment. This isn't over, Luke, Beverly declared, and I could hear them finally walking away, her heels clicking angrily against the tile floor like exclamation points. Yeah, it is though. I called after them. It's super over. Like, series finale, everyone died in the last episode levels of over. The door slammed somewhere down the hall, and then blessed silence returned to my little budget hotel sanctuary. I picked up my phone, which I turned back on to see if they'd given up, and saw approximately 47 new messages in various group chats. Threats, guilt trips, Bible verses taken wildly out of context, inspirational quotes about family that were definitely plagiarized from Pinterest, the whole greatest hits collection. I deleted every single group chat. Just straight up left them all. The satisfying little, "You have left this conversation" notification popped up multiple times, and each one felt like dropping a weight I'd been carrying. No more Sisters Forever. No more Morrison Family Love. No more Support Squad. Just gone. Deleted. Erased like they'd never existed. Then I ordered another pizza. a better one this time, from an actual Italian place instead of the hotel's sad excuse for room service. Opened my laptop and started making a list of everything I needed to do before Dublin. Cancel joint credit cards. Transfer utilities to Claire's name. Close our shared bank account. Pack the rest of my stuff. Update my address. Forward my mail. The logistics of leaving a marriage were surprisingly similar to the logistics of any other major move, except with more paperwork and fewer people helping you carry boxes. My phone buzzed one more time. A text from Sam, my buddy from work who'd watched this whole situation deteriorate over the years. Dude, I heard you're escaping to Ireland. Good for you. Want to grab a beer before you leave? I smiled and typed back. Yeah, man. I've got 13 days of freedom to celebrate. Let's do it. For the first time in years, I fell asleep without my jaw clenched, without my stomach in knots, without wondering how much this week's family emergency would cost me. Just quiet, peaceful sleep in a cheap hotel room that felt more like home than my actual apartment ever had. I woke up the next morning feeling weirdly optimistic, which should have been my first red flag that the universe was about to drop-kick me back into reality. The hotel bed was lumpy. The coffee from the lobby tasted like it had been brewed sometime during the Reagan administration, and I'm pretty sure the shower had exactly 2 temperature settings: Arctic tundra and surface of the sun. But despite all that, I felt lighter than I had in years. No guilt trips waiting in my inbox. No family emergencies requiring my immediate financial intervention. No desperate texts about manifestation and alignment and whatever other pseudo-spiritual nonsense was trending. Just me, my terrible coffee, and the beautiful knowledge that in 12 days, I'd be on a plane to Dublin where nobody knew about my in-laws or their various schemes. I was sitting on the bed scrolling through apartment listings in Dublin, because apparently my company's housing stipend was generous enough that I could actually afford a place with, like, walls and windows and other fancy amenities, when my phone started ringing. FaceTime. Claire's name popped up on the screen with that photo of her from our wedding day that I'd never bothered to change, back when I still thought marrying into this family was the best decision I'd ever made instead of the most expensive mistake of my life. Every functional brain cell I possessed screamed at me not to answer. Decline. Block. Throw the phone out the window and pretend it never existed. But apparently I'm a glutton for punishment, or maybe just morbidly curious about what fresh hell they'd cooked up overnight, because I swiped to accept the call. The screen filled with what can only be described as a tribunal. Not just Claire. Oh no, that would have been too simple, too reasonable. The entire family was assembled like they were staging an intervention on a very special episode of some reality show nobody wanted to watch. Claire was front and center, looking exhausted and annoyed in equal measure. Beverly sat next to her in full pearls and blazer regalia, like she was about to testify before Congress. Harold was positioned slightly behind them, his face already red and splotchy like he'd been yelling or had high blood pressure, or possibly both. Maya was dabbing at her eyes with a tissue in what appeared to be strategic crying, the kind where you make sure everyone can see you're upset, but you don't actually mess up your makeup. And Brooke, of course Brooke, had her phone propped up on a tripod in the corner, ring light blazing, clearly live streaming this entire disaster to her 17 followers because content is content, even when that content is a family meltdown. Luke, Beverly began in that syrupy sweet voice that immediately made my blood pressure spike. We're all very worried about your mental state. This behavior is concerning, and we think you might need help. I took a long, deliberate sip of my terrible hotel coffee, making them wait while I processed the absolute audacity of that opening statement. My mental state, I repeated slowly, like I was explaining something to a particularly dim child. You're worried about my mental state. That's fascinating. I'm the one with a stable job, a signed contract, and a plan for the future. Meanwhile, 2 people on that screen just voluntarily made themselves unemployed with zero backup plan, and somehow I'm the one whose mental health is in question. Claire jumped in before Beverly could respond, her arms folded across her chest in that defensive posture I'd learned to recognize over 6 years of marriage. We're your family, Luke. We just need support. You're good with money. You've always been good with money. This is temporary. Just a few months until the girls get on their feet. You keep saying that, I said, setting down my coffee cup with more force than necessary. You keep saying I'm good with money, like it's some kind of personality trait, like being fiscally responsible is contagious and you might catch it if you stand too close to me. I'm not good with money, Claire. I'm just not catastrophically bad with money, which by comparison to your family makes me look like Warren Buffett. Maya sniffled dramatically, clutching her tissue like it was a security blanket. You're being really negative right now, Luke. This energy is toxic. We're trying to have a constructive conversation, and you're attacking us. Constructive, I muttered, rubbing my temples because I could feel a headache forming. Right? Let me guess what constructive means in this context. I shut up, agree to whatever you want, and hand over my credit card. That sound about right. Harold leaned forward then, and I could see him trying to put on his serious father figure face, the one he probably practiced in the mirror before family meetings. Son, let's cut through all this anger and hurt and get to the practical matter at hand. The girls have an opportunity, a real business opportunity, and they just need a small amount of startup capital to get it off the ground. Small amount. Those two words together should be classified as a weapon because they've been used to destroy more financial stability than the housing market crash. How small are we talking, Harold? I asked, even though I knew I was walking into a trap. Because in my experience, small is a relative term. Small like $100? Small like 1,000? Help me understand what we're dealing with here. Harold cleared his throat, adjusted his collar, and said with absolutely zero self-awareness or shame, $200,000. I choked. Legitimately choked on air. My coffee cup slipped out of my hand and splashed onto the hotel comforter, but I barely noticed because my brain was too busy short-circuiting. I'm sorry, what? 200. Harold, did you just ask me for $200,000? That's not startup capital. That's a down payment on a house. That's 4 years of college tuition. Oh my God, you're serious. You're actually serious right now. It's an investment in the family, Beverly chimed in, like that somehow made the insanity of this request more reasonable. The girls want to launch a wellness coaching and travel blogging business. It's a growing market, and with the right initial investment, they could be very successful. What business? I was practically yelling now, all pretense of calm completely abandoned. What business are you talking about? Selling regret? Monetizing delusion? Teaching people how to quit their jobs with no backup plan? Maya's fake crying intensified, real tears actually forming now because apparently I'd hit a nerve. It's wellness coaching, Luke. I've been studying holistic healing and mindfulness, and I have so much to offer people who are struggling. And Brooke's travel content is really taking off. Taking off where, Maya? To her 17 followers? 12 of whom are probably spam accounts and Nigerian princes. I stood up and started pacing the small hotel room because sitting still was impossible. And wellness coaching? You can't even manage your own life. How are you going to coach other people? What's your credentials? A certificate you bought online for $99? Brooke finally spoke up from behind her ring light, and I could see she was genuinely offended, which would have been funny if it wasn't so pathetic. Actually, travel blogging is a legitimate career. People make millions doing it. I just need the right equipment and travel budget to create quality content. You have to spend money to make money. Travel blogging, I said flatly. Brooke, you don't even own luggage. I know you don't own luggage because 3 months ago you borrowed my suitcase for that weekend trip to Santa Barbara and returned it with a broken wheel and sand in every pocket. You want $200,000 to become a travel blogger when you can't even handle basic luggage ownership. Claire shot Brooke a look that clearly said, "Shut up, you're not helping," then turned back to the camera with this expression that was probably supposed to be gentle and understanding but just looked condescending. Luke, honey, you're focusing on the wrong things. This isn't about luggage or follower counts. This is about investing in family, believing in their dreams, and being there when it matters most. 200,000 is a lot of money, yes, but nothing. I interrupted because I was done being polite, done being understanding, done being the reasonable one while everyone else lived in fantasy land. Claire, let me break this down for you in terms even a chakra candle can understand. $200,000. That's more than I make in 3 years. 3 years of my life, working 40+ hours a week, dealing with office politics and deadlines and performance reviews. And you want me to hand it over to fund a business that doesn't exist, created by 2 people who have never successfully run anything except their bank accounts into the ground. Do you hear yourself right now? Do you understand how completely detached from reality this conversation is? Beverly's sweet facade cracked just a little, and I saw the steel underneath, the manipulation engine that had been running this family for decades. Luke, dear, we're not asking you to pay it all at once. We can structure it as a loan. Monthly payments. Very reasonable terms. And once the business takes off, and it will take off, they'll pay you back with interest. A loan, I repeated, and I actually laughed because the alternative was screaming. Beverly, do you know how many times I've heard that word in this family? It's just a loan, Luke. We'll pay you back, Luke. As soon as things stabilize, Luke. I've got a spreadsheet on my laptop. Yeah, an actual spreadsheet because I'm that guy now, of every single loan I've given this family over the past 6 years. Want to know the total? $43,000. Want to know how much has been paid back? Zero. Not a dime. Not a dollar. Nothing. So forgive me if I'm not exactly rushing to throw another 200 grand into that particular black hole. Harold's face went from red to purple, and I briefly worried he might stroke out on camera, which would have been unfortunate because then I'd probably be expected to pay for the funeral. Now you listen here, young man. I don't appreciate your tone or your attitude. We're offering you a legitimate business opportunity, and you're throwing it back in our faces with insults and disrespect. Legitimate business opportunity, I said, enunciating each word carefully. Harold, neither of your daughters has ever run a successful business. Maya's candle operation generated $47 in 8 months. That's $5.87 per month. I make more than that finding change in my couch cushions. And Brooke's travel blog doesn't exist yet. It's just an idea she had between posting selfies. There's no business plan, no market research, no competitive analysis, no revenue projections. This isn't a business opportunity, it's a very expensive fantasy. Maya dropped the tissue and leaned forward, her voice taking on this weird mystical quality like she was channeling some ancient wisdom instead of just making stuff up as she went along. You're operating from a place of fear and scarcity, Luke. The universe rewards those who take bold action. If you approach life with negativity and doubt, that's what you'll attract. We're asking you to trust in abundance, to believe in possibilities, to what, Maya? To ignore basic mathematics? To pretend that positive thinking pays rent. I cut her off before she could really get rolling because once Maya started with the manifestation talk, she could go for hours. Here's what I believe in. I believe in paying your bills on time. I believe in having an emergency fund. I believe in not quitting your job before you have another one lined up. I believe in reality, which apparently makes me the crazy one in this family. Brooke unmuted herself from behind the ring light, because of course she'd muted herself to check engagement on her live stream. My followers are saying you're being really toxic right now, Luke. One of them said this is a perfect example of how the patriarchy tries to control women's financial independence. I stared at the screen, genuinely speechless for a moment. Brooke, I'm not the patriarchy. I'm just a guy who doesn't want to go bankrupt funding your Instagram addiction. And your followers, all 17 of them, can say whatever they want. They're not the ones being asked to fork over $200,000 for a business plan written on a vision board with glitter glue. This is exactly what we were afraid of, Beverly said, shaking her head in disappointment like I was a child who'd failed a test. You've become hardened, Luke. Money has changed you. You used to be kind and generous and caring, but now all you see are numbers and spreadsheets. What happened to the man Claire married? That one hit different. Not because it made me feel guilty. I was way past that, but because it was so perfectly calculated, so expertly deployed. Beverly had saved her best weapon for last, the ultimate manipulation, suggesting that standing up for myself meant I'd somehow become a worse person. You want to know what happened to him, Beverly? I leaned closer to the camera, making sure they could all see my face clearly. He woke up. He realized that being kind doesn't mean being stupid. That being generous doesn't mean being broke. That being caring doesn't mean sacrificing everything while other people sacrifice nothing. The man Claire married still exists. He just finally grew a spine. Claire's eyes were watering now, real tears this time, not the strategic kind Maya had been deploying. So that's it. You're just walking away from all of us. 6 years of marriage, 6 years of family, and you're throwing it away over money. I'm not throwing anything away, Claire. I tried to build something with you. I tried to be supportive. I tried to help your family when they needed it. But there's a difference between helping someone through a rough patch and enabling a lifestyle of perpetual dependence. Your sisters don't need $200,000 to start a business. They need jobs. Actual jobs with paychecks and benefits and bosses who expect them to show up on time. They need accountability and responsibility and consequences for their choices, none of which they're going to get as long as there's someone, namely me, willing to fund their extended vacation from adulthood. Harold stood up, pointing at the camera like he was trying to physically reach through the screen and shake some sense into me. You're making a huge mistake, son. Family is everything. When you're old and alone, you'll regret this. You'll regret turning your back on the people who loved you. Harold, the only thing I'm going to regret is not doing this sooner, I said calmly, feeling a weird sense of peace settle over me despite the chaos on the screen. I've spent 6 years being your family's safety net, and I'm tired. I'm tired of being taken for granted. I'm tired of being treated like an ATM that dispenses cash and never asks questions. I'm tired of being made to feel guilty for wanting a future that doesn't involve eternal debt. So yeah, I'm walking away. Not from love, because real love doesn't come with a price tag, but from manipulation dressed up as family obligation. Maya was full-on sobbing now, makeup finally running, tissue disintegrating in her hands. We'll never forgive you for this. You're destroying this family. I'm not destroying anything, I said quietly. I'm just refusing to pay for the destruction anymore. There's a difference. Brooke's voice came from somewhere off-screen, probably reading comments from her live stream. Someone just super chatted $5 and said you're giving off major narcissist energy. Tell them thanks for the $5, I said. That's still more than Maya's made on candles this month. Beverly made one last attempt, her voice dropping into that honey-smooth register that had probably worked on me 100 times before. Luke, sweetheart, just think about it. Sleep on it. Don't make any rash decisions you can't take back. We can work this out. We're family. Family works things out. I've been thinking about it for 6 years, Beverly. I've slept on it enough to develop chronic insomnia. And I'm not making a rash decision. I'm making the most carefully considered decision of my entire adult life. I moved my finger toward the end call button, hovering there for just a moment. I hope the girls figure things out. I genuinely do. But they're going to have to figure it out without my wallet. Luke, don't you dare. Claire started, but I was done listening. I ended the call. The screen went black, and the silence in my hotel room was so complete, so absolute, that I could hear my own heartbeat. For about 3 seconds, I felt this wave of panic. Did I really just do that? Did I really just cut off my entire marriage, my wife's family, 6 years of history? Then my phone started buzzing with incoming messages, and I looked down at the screen lighting up with notifications. Threats, guilt trips, Bible verses, more threats. Someone had apparently found a quote about betrayal and decided it applied to me. I held down the power button until the phone shut off completely. Then I sat there in the quiet, drinking my terrible coffee, and smiled. 11 days until Dublin. 11 days until freedom. I could make it. I made it approximately 3 hours before I caved and turned my phone back on, which in retrospect was probably a mistake on par with every other terrible decision I'd made regarding this family. But I needed to check my work email, and I figured surely they'd cooled off by now. Surely they'd taken a breath and realized that maybe, just maybe, asking someone for $200,000 and then acting shocked when they said no was slightly unreasonable. I was wrong. So spectacularly, magnificently wrong. The first notification that popped up was from Facebook, which I barely used anymore except for remembering people's birthdays and occasionally looking at pictures of my high school friends' kids. Beverly had posted something about 45 minutes ago, and judging by the notification count, it was getting some serious engagement. I clicked on it with the kind of morbid curiosity that makes people slow down to look at car accidents, and immediately wished I hadn't. Some men show their true colors when family asks them to provide, she'd written, accompanied by a stock photo of a sad-looking woman staring out a window like she was in a depression medication commercial. In times of crisis, we learn who truly values family bonds and who only pretends to care, praying for those who choose money over love. The post had 73 likes and 42 comments, which was approximately 73 likes and 42 comments more engagement than Beverly usually got on her normal content about gardening and church potlucks. I scrolled through the comments, each one more ridiculous than the last. Aunt Patricia, who I'd met exactly twice at weddings and who'd spent both occasions complaining about gluten, had written, "So sad when people forget what really matters." Cousin Jennifer, who'd asked me for money to fund her essential oils pyramid scheme last year, added, "Family should always come first," with approximately 17 exclamation points. The best part, and by best I mean absolute worst, was that Beverly hadn't mentioned me by name, but she'd tagged Claire, Maya, and Brooke in the post, which meant everyone who saw it knew exactly who she was talking about. It was public shaming with plausible deniability, emotional manipulation with a side of social media savvy. Impressive, honestly. Evil, but impressive. I was still processing Beverly's post when I saw Maya's contribution to the digital pylon. She'd shared some inspirational quote graphic about toxic masculinity, the kind with a sunset background and fancy script font that absolutely screamed. I found this on Pinterest and decided it was deep. The caption read, "Toxic masculinity wears suits and talks about financial responsibility while crushing the dreams of women trying to build something beautiful. When men fear female success, they create barriers and call it logic." I see you. The universe sees you. Karma is taking notes. Karma is taking notes. Like Karma was sitting in the corner with a little notebook, carefully documenting my crimes against the wellness industry. I wondered if Karma also noted the $3,000 I'd given Maya for her candle business, or if the universe only kept records of things that supported the narrative. The comments on Maya's post were a fascinating mix of support from her fellow spiritual entrepreneurs, which seemed to be code for unemployed people who sage their apartments, and confused responses from people who clearly had no idea what she was talking about. Someone named Crystal posted, "Men really need to do the inner work and heal their scarcity mindset." Another account called Moonbeam something or other added, "The patriarchy is terrified of powerful women who refuse to play small." I wanted to comment, "I'm not terrified of powerful women. I'm terrified of my bank account hitting zero." But I had just enough self-control left to resist. Then I made the mistake of checking Instagram, and there it was, Brooke's masterpiece. A selfie of her crying, professionally lit, perfectly filtered, with just the right amount of mascara running to look authentic but not unattractive. The caption was an essay-length piece of creative fiction that should have won awards for its sheer audacity. "Betrayal hurts more than unemployment." It began, and I had to read that sentence 3 times to make sure I wasn't hallucinating. When someone you trust, someone you welcomed into your family with open arms, decides that money is more important than supporting your dreams, it cuts deep. I'm processing a lot right now. My sister's husband just abandoned us during our most vulnerable moment. We lost our jobs, we're struggling, and instead of being there for us, he chose greed. But I'm choosing growth. I'm choosing to turn this pain into purpose. I'm choosing to use this experience to fuel my wellness journey and show others that you can rise above toxic people who try to dim your light. Link in bio for my healing workshops. Use code STRONG for 20% off. She was monetizing this. She was literally trying to make money off the situation by offering discount codes to her non-existent wellness workshops. The hustle was actually kind of impressive in a deeply disturbing way. I scrolled through the comments and saw exactly what I expected. Her 17 followers. Sorry, looks like she was up to 19 now, probably gained 2 from the drama. Offering support and emojis, and completely buying into her version of events where I was some kind of cartoon villain who'd kicked puppies and stolen dreams. My finger hovered over the comment button. I had so many responses loaded and ready to go. Try taxes was too simple. Betrayal hurts more than unemployment. Try both. I've been betrayed, and I'm the only one employed was too long. I'll Venmo you $5 if you use it for a reality check instead of a ring light. Was too mean, although also accurate. But I didn't comment, didn't react, didn't engage. Because here's what I learned in 6 years of dealing with this family. Engaging only fed the drama. Responding only gave them ammunition. The best response was no response, which drove them absolutely crazy, but also meant I couldn't be quoted out of context or screenshotted and shared as evidence of my toxicity. I was in the middle of blocking all 3 of them on every platform I could think of when someone knocked on my hotel room door. Not the aggressive pounding from last night. This was a normal, reasonable knock from what I hoped was a normal, reasonable human being. I checked the peephole and saw Sam standing there holding 2 six-packs of beer and wearing a grin that suggested he'd heard about my public social media execution and had come to bear witness. I opened the door, And he walked in without waiting for an invitation, setting the beer on the desk and immediately cracking one open. "Dude," he said, pulling out his phone and showing me Beverly's Facebook post. "You're famous. My mom shared this in our family group chat asking if this was about you." I told her absolutely not. "You would never abandon family. You're basically a saint." "Your mom knows Beverly?" I asked, grabbing a beer because if I was going to relive this nightmare, I might as well be slightly buzzed for it. "No, but apparently it's making the rounds in the over 50 crowd. Something about the algorithm pushing it to other moms who love passive-aggressive posting about their ungrateful children and in-laws." Sam scrolled through his phone, clearly enjoying this way more than he should. "Oh, this is good." Maya's post has been shared to some feminist group calling it an example of economic abuse. They're having a whole discussion about it. Economic abuse. I repeated flatly. I'm economically abusing them by not giving them $200,000 for a business that doesn't exist. Sam sat down on the edge of the bed and pulled up Maya's Instagram post, reading the caption out loud in this mock-serious voice that made it sound even more ridiculous than it already was. "When men fear female success, they create barriers and call it logic." Dude, you're not creating barriers. You're just refusing to be a human credit card. There's a difference. Try explaining that to the 19 people who liked her post, I said, taking a long drink of my beer. Apparently wanting to keep my own money makes me the patriarchy's poster child. I should put that on my resume. Luke Morrison, professional oppressor of female entrepreneurship. Sam laughed and kept scrolling. Oh man, Brooke's post is something else. She's really selling this victim narrative. And wait, she's got a link in bio for wellness workshops? What wellness workshops? I thought she worked at a juice bar. She did work at a juice bar. Past tense. As of yesterday, she's a full-time, unemployed wellness influencer with a healing journey to monetize. I collapsed into the desk chair and rubbed my eyes, suddenly exhausted despite it only being early afternoon. This is my life, Sam. This is what I've been dealing with for 6 years. They create chaos. I'm expected to fund the chaos. And when I finally say no, I become the villain in their carefully curated social media narrative. Sam set down his phone and looked at me with something approaching concern, which was unusual because Sam's default setting was sarcastic detachment. Real talk for a second. Are you okay? Like, actually okay? Because this is a lot, man. You're basically blowing up your entire life and moving to Ireland in less than 2 weeks. That's some serious action movie protagonist stuff. Honestly, I feel better than I have in years, I admitted, and it was true. Despite the social media smear campaign, despite my in-laws staging interventions in hotel hallways, despite my marriage imploding in real time, I felt lighter. It's like I've been carrying this massive weight around, and I finally just put it down. Yeah, my phone is blowing up. Yeah, I'm probably going to be the villain in family stories for the next decade. But Sam, they asked me for $200,000. With a straight face. Like that was a normal, reasonable request. 200,000. Sam's eyes went wide. For what? A down payment on a small country. For a wellness coaching and travel blogging business that doesn't exist yet. I showed him my phone, pulling up the video call recording I'd secretly made. Yeah, I'd recorded it, sue me, and fast-forwarded to Harold's big ask. We watched Harold's face on screen, saw him adjust his collar and deliver that ridiculous number with absolute confidence. And Sam just started laughing. Not polite chuckling, full-on doubled-over wheezing laughter. They really said that, he gasped between laughs. They really looked at you, a regular guy with a regular job, and thought, yeah, he definitely has 200 grand just lying around waiting to fund our daughter's Instagram fantasies. That's incredible. That's advanced-level delusion. That's PhD-level disconnection from reality. And when I said no, I became the bad guy. I said, finishing my beer and immediately reaching for another because this conversation required liquid courage. When I pointed out that maybe grown women should have jobs and savings before quitting their employment, I was being toxic and controlling and exhibiting scarcity mindset. The math isn't mathing, as the kids say. Sam pulled out his own phone and started typing, his face scrunched up in concentration. Okay, I'm doing some quick calculations here. Your salary is what? Around 70 grand a year. 68, but close enough. So they asked you for approximately 3 years of your gross salary, before taxes, mind you. To fund a business venture with zero market research, zero business plan, and zero chance of success. And they're mad that you said no. Luke, my dude, I say this with love. Your in-laws are absolutely out of their minds. I'm aware, I said dryly. I've been aware for about 5 years now, but I kept thinking things would get better. That Maya would eventually get a real job and stick with it. That Brooke would grow up and realize follower counts don't pay rent. That Beverly would stop treating me like the family's emergency fund. Spoiler alert, none of that happened. My phone buzzed on the desk, and we both looked at it like it might explode. Another notification from Facebook, then Instagram, then Twitter. I didn't even know I'd been tagged on Twitter. The digital pylon was reaching new heights, apparently spreading beyond just the family to their extended networks of wellness coaches, spiritual entrepreneurs, and other people who'd weaponized self-care language to justify not having jobs. Don't look at it, Sam advised, pushing the phone away. Seriously, man, nothing good is happening in that phone right now. Let them have their moment. Let them vent and post and share and whatever else they need to do. You're leaving in 11 days anyway. What are they going to do? Follow you to Ireland and guilt trip you across the Atlantic? Don't give them ideas, I muttered, but he had a point. What was the worst that could happen? They'd already turned me into a social media villain, already tried the in-person intervention, already deployed every guilt tactic in their considerable arsenal. Short of actually showing up in Dublin, which would require plane tickets they definitely couldn't afford, they'd played all their cards. My phone rang, and I glanced at the screen. Unknown number. I showed it to Sam, who shrugged and made a your funeral gesture. Against my better judgment, I answered. Luke? Luke Morrison? The voice on the other end was vaguely familiar, but I couldn't quite place it. Speaking. Who's this? It's David Chun, from college. Listen, I saw some posts going around about you and family drama, and I just wanted to reach out. My wife went through something similar with her family, and I thought you might want to talk to someone who gets it. I sat there for a second, genuinely touched that someone from my past life, someone who barely knew me anymore, had taken the time to call and offer support. David, man, I appreciate that. Really, how'd you get my number? Sam gave it to me, he said, and I shot Sam a look. Sam just grinned and held up his beer in a mock toast. Look, I'm not going to take up your time, but I run a support group for people dealing with toxic family dynamics. It's online, totally anonymous if you want. I'll text you the link. No pressure, but it helped my wife a lot when she was going through it. We talked for a few more minutes, and by the time I hung up, I had 3 more texts from other college friends I hadn't spoken to in years. Apparently, Sam had sent out some kind of bat signal to everyone in our old crew, and they'd all rallied with messages of support, offers to grab drinks, and a surprising amount of understanding about the situation. It was weirdly emotional, actually. For 6 years, I'd felt increasingly isolated, like I was the only person who thought my in-laws' behavior was insane. Turns out, plenty of people had been watching from the sidelines thinking the same thing, but not wanting to interfere. You orchestrated this, I said to Sam, gesturing at my phone that was now lighting up with actually positive messages instead of guilt trips and manipulation. Guilty, Sam admitted, not looking even slightly apologetic. Figured you could use some support from people who aren't trying to bleed you dry financially. Plus, like half our friend group has in-law horror stories. Remember Jessica? Her husband's family tried to get them to co-sign on an RV they wanted to live in full-time. An RV. To live in. Not vacation in, live in. Did they do it? Hell no. She told them to get jobs like normal people, and now they don't speak to her, but she and her husband are doing great. Bought a house, had a kid, living their best life without RV-dwelling in-laws guilt-tripping them at every holiday. I looked at my phone, at the growing number of supportive messages from people I'd lost touch with over the years, and felt something shift in my chest. For so long, I'd been convinced that saying no to family made me a bad person, that setting boundaries was selfish, that walking away meant I'd failed somehow. But here were dozens of people, good people, successful people, people with functioning relationships, telling me I'd done the right thing. You know what? I said, standing up and grabbing my laptop. I'm deleting all my social media. Not deactivating, deleting. Just scorched earth, total removal. They can post whatever they want, but I won't be there to see it. Extreme, but probably healthy, Sam agreed. Although, can you wait like 5 minutes? Because there's a comment thread on Brooke's post where someone's arguing that you're morally obligated to fund your in-laws' dreams because of something about generational wealth and systemic oppression, and it's absolutely wild. I laughed, actually laughed, and opened another beer. Show me. We spent the next hour reading through the increasingly unhinged comment threads, Sam providing running commentary that had me crying with laughter. People who'd never met me, never met my in-laws, had very strong opinions about my moral obligations and financial responsibilities. One person argued that refusing to give someone $200,000 was a form of violence. Actual violence. Another suggested I needed therapy for my hoarding mentality, as if wanting to keep my own money was some kind of psychological disorder. The internet was a mistake, I declared, finally closing my laptop and pushing it away. We should go back to communicating via carrier pigeon and handwritten letters. At least then people had to think about what they were saying before they committed it to paper. Carrier pigeons are expensive though, Sam pointed out. Your in-laws would probably ask you to fund their pigeon business. It's just $200,000 for startup costs, Luke. The bird market is really taking off. I threw a pillow at him. The night before my flight, Claire showed up at the hotel. I don't know how she found me this time. Maybe she'd bribed the front desk. Maybe she'd tracked my credit card. Maybe she'd just driven to every budget hotel in a 15-mile radius until she found my car in the parking lot. Didn't matter. I opened the door, saw her standing there with her arms crossed, and that expression that used to make me cave, but now just made me tired, and I knew this was the final boss battle. You'll regret this, she said, not even bothering with hello or how are you or any other social niceties. Straight to the guilt trip. Efficient, at least. Probably. I agreed, leaning against the doorframe. But I'll do it from Dublin, where the coffee's actually good and the Wi-Fi doesn't cut out every 15 minutes. Plus, no in-laws trying to financially ruin me. That's a nice bonus. She flinched like I'd slapped her, but I was past caring about her feelings when she clearly hadn't cared about mine for years. We stood there in awkward silence for a moment, and I waited for her to say something. Anything that might make this feel less like a business transaction and more like the end of a marriage. She didn't. I left your keys on the kitchen counter, I said finally. Utilities are in your name now. The apartment's all yours. Do whatever you want with it. That's it. Her voice cracked. 6 years, and that's all you have to say? What do you want me to say, Claire? That I'm sorry? I'm not. That I'll change my mind. I won't. You made your choice when you gave me that ultimatum. I just made mine. The next morning, I packed my bags with the kind of satisfaction usually reserved for completing a really difficult puzzle. Every shirt folded felt like a small victory. Every item I fit into my suitcase was another piece of my old life I was leaving behind. At the airport, my phone buzzed one last time. Claire's text lit up the screen. We won't forget this. I smiled and typed back. Neither will I. Then I boarded the plane, ordered a whiskey that cost more than it should, and toasted to peace, freedom, and the beautiful word no. Dublin was colder than I expected, like someone had forgotten to tell Ireland that October was supposed to ease into winter instead of cannonballing straight into it. But emotionally, it was the tropics compared to my marriage. Sunshine and warmth and the kind of peace you only get when nobody's asking you to fund their delusional business ventures. My company apartment overlooked a canal that looked like something out of a postcard, and that first night, I slept like a man who'd escaped a cult. No guilt trips. No family emergencies. No text messages at 3 in the morning about manifestation and abundance and whatever other buzzwords Maya had discovered. Just silence, beautiful silence, and a mattress that didn't have years of resentment embedded in the springs. The Irish co-workers were friendly in that blunt, no-nonsense way that I'd been desperately missing. My manager, Declan, a guy with red hair and the kind of accent that made everything sound either poetic or like a threat, cornered me on my second day with a grin. So, you ran from your wife or from the taxes? Both, I said without hesitation. But the taxes chase slower. He laughed so hard he nearly spilled his coffee. And just like that, I had a friend. For the first time in years, life was quiet. No guilt messages lighting up my phone at dinner. No emergency Venmo requests that somehow always arrived right before payday. No family group chats planning interventions or asking for small loans that cost more than a used car. Just me, my job, and the blissful sound of my own boundaries being respected. After a week, Claire's silence stretched from uncomfortable to peaceful. No calls, no texts, no final attempts at manipulation. Just nothing. And it was glorious. I got promoted early. Turns out when you're not constantly stressed about your in-laws' financial disasters, you actually perform better at work. Made friends with the team. Even joined a pub quiz group that called themselves the former in-laws, which felt weirdly therapeutic. We won every round. Probably because I'd spent 6 years mastering the art of knowing random facts to avoid talking about my actual life. Dublin wasn't perfect. The weather sucked, the coffee was overpriced, and I still occasionally woke up expecting a guilt trip that never came. But I was free. Actually, genuinely free. And that was worth every cold, rainy morning. Months later, I found myself doing something I never thought I'd do. I scrolled through my old text threads with Claire, with Maya, with Brooke, with the whole dysfunctional crew. Not out of nostalgia or regret, but more like examining evidence from a crime scene after you've already escaped. Looking at those messages felt like reading someone else's story, like watching a horror movie where you want to scream at the protagonist to just leave already. Except the protagonist was past me, and he finally got the memo. I opened my notes app and typed something that felt both profound and ridiculous. Debt cleared. Emotionally, financially, spiritually. Then I added, also literally, paid off that credit card I maxed out on Maya's candle supplies. Because even in my moments of reflection, I couldn't help being petty. Growth is a journey, not a destination, or whatever. A week later, my phone rang. Claire's name popped up, and I stared at it for a solid 10 seconds, debating whether answering would undo all the progress I'd made. Curiosity won, as it always does, and I picked up. Her voice was different, softer, almost human, without the edge of manipulation I'd grown so accustomed to. We're doing fine, Luke. The girls found part-time work. I just wanted you to know. Part-time work. The words hung in the air like a miracle, like proof that when the backup plan disappears, people actually figure their lives out. I wanted to say, I told you so, or maybe try full-time work next, or any of the sarcastic responses that were queued up in my brain, but I didn't. Because honestly, I didn't care anymore. Their success or failure wasn't my problem, wasn't my responsibility, wasn't my burden to carry. That's good, Claire, I said simply. I hope it works out. She said something else, but I was already mentally checking out, already thinking about the pub quiz later and the project deadline next week and my actual life that didn't revolve around managing other people's chaos. We said goodbye like strangers, which I guess we were now. I smiled, deleted the voicemail without saving it, and turned up the music. Now, every Sunday morning, I sit on my balcony overlooking the Dublin skyline with coffee that doesn't taste like regret, watching the city wake up. The sun hits the buildings just right, and I feel something I haven't felt in years, content. Not deliriously happy, not jumping for joy ecstatic, just peacefully, quietly content. Once, I thought love meant paying everyone's bills and setting myself on fire to keep others warm. Now I know real love means not losing your sanity for people who confuse help with servitude, who mistake boundaries for betrayal, who think your wallet is a renewable resource. Freedom didn't come with fireworks or dramatic music or a movie-ending kiss. It came with decent Wi-Fi, silence, and Sunday morning coffee on a balcony in Dublin. And trust me, silence is priceless.